The 12 Dancing Princesses. Once upon a time, there was a king with 12 daughters, each more beautiful than the last. Every night they went quietly to bed, for the king never allowed them to stay up late. So imagine his surprise when, one morning, the princesses came down to breakfast with tired eyes and their little silk slippers in tatters, as if they had danced the night away. "What's this?" he demanded. "Where have you been?" The princesses yawned and rubbed their eyes and refused to say. The next night the king locked their bedroom door, but by morning the princesses had worn out a second set of slippers. The night after that the king locked the door and put guards around it, but the same thing happened. In despair, the king issued a royal decree. If any man can discover where the princesses are going at night, he shall have half my kingdom and the hand of one of the princesses in marriage. As word spread, many men took up the challenge, but none succeeded. The king grew grumpier and grumpier, and then a young man carrying a faded, weather-stained cloak arrived. "My name is Rafe, and I'm here for the challenge," he announced. The king frowned. "I don't want another time-waster," he snapped. "If you fail, I'll throw you in the dungeons." Rafe gave a carefree smile. "I don't plan to fail," he replied simply. He caught the eye of Rose, the youngest princess, and winked, making her blush prettily. "He's too handsome to be locked up," she sighed to her sisters. "Don't be silly," Amaryllis, the eldest, hissed back. "He mustn't find out where we go, or we won't be able to dance any more. Father hates dancing. He never holds any balls." Rose hung her head, but still, it is a shame, she thought. That night, Rafe took up watch outside the bedroom. Inside, the princesses were chattering and laughing and getting ready for bed. Then the door creaked open and Amaryllis looked out. "It will be very cold sitting out in the corridor all night," she said kindly. "Won't you have a hot drink?" She passed him a steaming goblet and watched as he lifted it to his lips. Delicious," he sighed. "Thank you." Amaryllis smiled and closed the door. As soon as the lock clicked, Rafe emptied the goblet out the window. "I'm sure that was a sleeping potion," he thought. "I'd better look as if I'm asleep." He sat down on the floor, closed his eyes, and began gently to snore. Soon the door creaked open again, and Amaryllis peered out at Rafe. "All clear," she called, ducking back inside. There was a flurry of footsteps, a creak of hinges, and then silence. Rafe opened his eyes. "Time to see what's really going on," he thought. He pulled out his cloak, threw it across his shoulders, and vanished, for it was a magic cloak that made the wearer invisible. Quickly, he tiptoed into the princess's room. Empty. But what's that? Underneath a rumpled rug, a secret trapdoor led down some steep steps into a winding passage. Rafe ran silently down the steps. He soon caught up with the princesses, beautifully dressed in long silk dresses and sleek new slippers. In his haste, he stepped on the hem of Rose's skirt. "Oh!" she exclaimed. "Someone pulled my dress." "There's no one there, silly," laughed Amaryllis. It must have caught on a nail. The passage ended in an underground forest where golden leaves rustled on silver branches. Between the leaves, heavy-looking fruit glittered strangely. Jewels, realized Rafe, gazing at huge diamonds, sapphires, and rubies. When no one was looking, he reached out a hand, and snap! He broke off a small branch, sparkling with diamonds, and tucked it under his cloak. "Did you hear that?" said Rose. "Someone is following us." "Don't be silly," sighed Amaryllis. "You must have just stepped on a twig." Beyond the forest lay a glassy lake lit by strings of silver lanterns, and on an island in the middle stood a castle, its windows glowing invitingly. Lilting music echoed across the water. A row of boats lined the shore, each with a handsome prince at the oars, ready to row the princesses across. Rafe watched as the princesses boarded, then stepped quickly after Rose. "This boat feels heavier than usual," she said with a frown. "That's because you ate too much at dinner," called over Amaryllis from her boat. "Now stop worrying." Before Rose could answer, they were there. The princes and princesses stepped out of the boats and swept up the steps in a swish of silks. Rafe darted after them. Now they were in a magnificent ballroom lined with gleaming mirrors and lit by golden candlelight. Rafe couldn't see any musicians, but somehow music filled the air. The princes bowed to the princesses, took their hands, and began to waltz. They danced for hours, never pausing or growing tired, swirling and twirling gracefully in time to the never-ending music. "This is truly an enchanting place," thought Rafe, watching, although nothing here is as enchanting as Rose. At last a clock chimed, and the sisters shook themselves as if waking from a dream. "Time to go," called Amaryllis. The princesses hurried home, their dancing shoes in tatters once again. Rafe was close behind. Back in their room, they climbed, yawning, into bed, while he pulled off his cloak and sat down outside the door as if he had never been away. In the morning, the king summoned Rafe to his throne room. "Well," he said curtly. Behind the throne, Rose held her breath. Rafe smiled. "Your Majesty, your daughters have been dancing in an enchanted castle deep under the ground." The king snorted with laughter. "Don't be ridiculous," he began, but he stopped abruptly when Rafe held up the branch of diamonds. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. And so Rafe told him about the secret trapdoor and how he had followed the princesses through the underground forest to the castle by the lake. When he had finished, the king nodded slowly. "I can see you are telling the truth. You have succeeded in the challenge. Half my kingdom is yours. Which of my daughters would you like to marry?" In reply, Rafe sank down onto one knee. "Princess Rose," he said, gazing shyly up at her, "if she will have me." "Oh yes," said Rose, blushing happily. "I suppose now there will be no more dancing," sighed Amaryllis. "Oh, but there will," insisted Rafe. "I love dancing, and I promise to hold plenty of balls." And he did.